Hi, in this video I'd like to continue making this bottom control panel that I'm trying to make for my Python GUI. And in my last video I dealt with the toggle button right here and these checkboxes right here. So I want to, in this video, make this time control box, this button right here, and these two edit text boxes that will control the y-axis of the graph. Now these are going to have a little, I don't know, this is how it's going to have sort of a trick to it. But yeah, so let's start to modify the code that we have. So here's my checkbox. I've binded my checkbox to the onCheck event. And now let's make this this text box that's going to say how quickly I want to sample. So I'm going to have a self. Now in wxPython it's called a text control box, but in my head I think I'm of a text box. So I'm going to call it a text box, even though it's really a text control. So when I say text box, that's what I mean. So I'm going to have a text box, and this is going to be a text box sample time is equal to a wx.textCtrl, and it's going to have a self. It's going to have an ID of -1. It's going to have a label of 1000. It's going to have a position. Let's keep it aligned, so 200, but let's drop it down a little further. And we're going to give it a size of, let's say, 100 and -1. What this does right here is this says, okay, we're going to say you're going to have 100 size in this direction, but we're going to leave the height as default. So the -1 just means default. Now when we run this, we're going to have this sample right here. So I think this is a little too long. I'm going to cut this in half again. So I'm going to call this 50, and that should be good. And then I'm going to create the actual button I have. So this is going to be a self.button send, I guess, is equal to a wx.button self -1. Give it a label of send. And the position is going to be, it's going to be offset this time, so I'm going to call it 250, but I want to keep it on the same Y, so I'm going to call it 115. And let's see what this looks like. So I don't really like GUI programming because you have to, it's just so tedious. That looks okay. It could look better, but we can give it a size. Let's give it another size of just 50, I guess. -1. So I mean, this is the reason I don't like programmatically creating creating GUIs, but I don't know a better way to do it in Python. So yeah, so now we have a send button. We have this sample time, and let's bind this button send. So self.button send.bind, and we're going to bind it to a wx.evt button. Notice it's different than the toggle button. So this needs to go with a regular button. This needs to go with a toggle button. And we're going to create a function called self.onSend. Seems okay right now. So let's define onSend. And what I want to do is just print out the value of my text box sample time. So let's get our value. So value is equal to self.textbox sample time dot get value, and we're just going to print val. And when we do this, we're going to see 1,000. We're going to see 5,000, 500. So this is going to be the sample time that the Arduino is going to receive, and it's in milliseconds. So 500 is half a second, 1,000 is 1 second. So we have our on send. What else do we need? We need to create this part. 2 more control boxes, 1 more button. So, and probably some labels. So let's do a label. Min y is equal to a wx static text. None of this should be new, except for how we're going to control this type of panel with this type of control panel. So let's just do the static text -1, call it min y, and we'll give it a position of 410. Then we'll do a label, we'll just put the button. So the text control first. So self.textbox min y axis is equal to a wx.text control, which has a self -1. We'll give it a value of 0 right now. It needs to be a string, so that's important to know for later. And we'll try that. We'll see how this looks. Yep, that looks okay to me. So now let's copy the same thing for our max y. And the only thing that's going to be different is where this actually falls. So like in the position. So I'm going to guess it's going to be 60. And then set self.textbox max y axis is equal to a wx.text control. We'll call it 1024 right now, and that will be from the 0, the values that the analog input can get. And yeah, and so our position will be 400 and let's say 80. See what this looks like. That looks okay, and we just need 1 more button. So let's do a self.button, call it range, and this is equal to a wx button. Self -1 will set y axis, and we'll have a position is equal to 400 and 105, I guess. And then we're going to need to bind this, so we'll just do that now. Self.button range is dot bind, and it's going to have to do this wx event button, and we'll have a self dot set button range. So define the self button range. We'll just say right now we'll print that axis button clicked. So let's run this. So right now, the button's clicked. That's good. We can actually, this will lead us. So our min is going to be this self.textbox min y axis dot get label, I think, get value, and our max is going to be a self.textBoxValue max y-axis.getValue. I just want to make sure this is right, so I'm going to print min and print max. So when I get this, I get 0 and 1024, and I get 0 and 512. So I want to take these two values and I want to change this analog input count to what those values are. Now the problem is this is a class right here and this is another class right there. Right now they don't know about each other. But what I can do is I can change top is declared before bottom. So I can give bottom a reference to my top class. So this is how I figured out how to do it. There might be a better way. So we have bottom, we're going to give it a reference to the top panel. We're going to need to change the init to, let's call this top. So this init is going to have some reference of top, and then we're going to call self.graph is equal to top. And now what this is saying is this variable self.graph is going to have a reference to our top panel. So in our top panel, we're going to need to have a new function that's going to be change the axis, and it's going to take a min and a max value. And what we're going to do is we're going to say self.axis.set y limit. And remember, it was a string, so we're going to have to cast these to a float. So we're going to have to put float min, float max. Oops, that would have been bad. And we're going to have to say refresh the canvas. So we're going to have to do canvas.draw. So that will take a minimum and a maximum value. It will set the y limit of the min and of the max and refresh the canvas to draw it. So now when we get our button range, we have our min and our max. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to say self.graph, which is a top panel, dot change axis, and we're going to have to give it min and we're going to have to give it max. So now when we run this, we have a min and a max. If we set the y-axis, see, we're going to scale it between 0 and 1024. If we go from -5 to 5, because that's sort of what our sine wave looks like, we're going to see it go between -5 and 5. So now we have the ability to scale the y-axis. In my next video, I guess, I'll deal with the Arduino side of what I think the Arduino needs to send to this GUI. But right now, we've created the Python GUI part of this project.